get ready to get sticky. Sticky Situations is sponsored by Corona Crush. Corona Crush is creating Jewish couples always. Join the Facebook group. Just search Corona Crush and look out for virtual speed dating events happening every other week. They're 100% free and 100% Jewish.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Sticky Situations. I'm your host, Rachel, which obviously you already know because we're a lot of episodes in, and also I'm just very unforgettable. Everyone, right now, whatever platform you're listening on, go give us a 5-star rating and a glowing review if the platform allows for it. And FYI, to all of those Spotify listeners, you can give a rating on Spotify, and someone has been trolling me and giving me bad ratings. So can you just do me a favor and go give me 5 stars now on Spotify to up my ratings from the trolls? And if you're just trolling me, then stop listening. I don't like you, and I don't want you to listen to my podcast. Everyone else, you're great. Keep listening. Also, go like Sticky Situations page on Facebook. Follow Sticky Situations Pod on Instagram. Follow Sticky Situations Pod on TikTok. Yeah, I know, I say this all the time. I'm not that great with the social media. If anyone wants to come help me with the social media, you're welcome to. But, just go follow. Sometimes I post content. And I also will post my new episodes on the Instagram. Speaking of Instagram, if you would like to be a guest on my podcast and come share your dating stories, you can. There are applications in my Corona Crush posts every week, every episode. And there are also links to application in the Instagram page and in the Facebook page. I can't remember where they are, but you can go try to find them. Or you could just send me a DM on Instagram, again, at StickySituationsPod. Or send me an email at stickysituationspod@gmail.com. Same goes for if you want to date any of my single guests. Feel free to reach out. I'd love to be a shotgun. I know I say this all the time. I'll try to hook you up. I can't promise they'll say yes. I can't promise that it'll work. But I can try. I can try to make it happen for you. So there are applications for that. Or just send me a DM or email. I'll answer. But please reach out. I want to hear from you guys. Okay. Everybody, I have an extra special guest today. Please welcome my friend Yoni. Yoni, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. This is exciting. Okay, Yoni, before we get into your dating stories, can you tell my listeners just a couple things about you, your age, location, relationship status, and religious denomination?
All right, so age, I'm in my upper 20s. Location?
Yes.
Location, I live on the East Coast.
Okay.
What was the next one?
Relationship status?
My relationship status is single.
And religious denomination?
Jewish. Is that what you mean by relationship?
Orthodox?
Modern Orthodox. Dati Leumi.
Oh, yeah. That's me. Okay, Yoni, should we jump right in?
Let's do it.
Do you want to start with a story?
Sure, I can start with the story. All right, so sharing some of my dating stories happens to be that most of the people that I go out with happen to be normal people. And there was one of the scenarios where I feel like it was usually it's normal people. I go on the date, let's say we're both not interested in each other, it doesn't work out. Let's say I'm interested, and she's not interested, doesn't work out, but still completely normal, respectable. Or the other way around. She's interested, I'm not interested, but still respectful, completely normal people that I would say hello to on the street or just be very courteous to. But there was a scenario. So I had one of my friend's mothers set me up. And so this is a friend of mine who she herself has set me up before. And she's done a good job where I was genuinely either interested in the person or I felt that she got my vibe, my kind of person. And so when her mother went to set me up, I said, sure. There was maybe somewhat of a track record. So this is the first person that her mother had ever set me up with. And so I said, sure, yes, after hearing about this person. And we exchanged, I sent my friend's mother my number, or she had my number already. And anyways, we exchanged numbers between the girl I'm supposed to go out with. So I messaged this girl. And I asked her a few questions, or I go to set up a time to talk on the phone, which sometimes is the way that I'll do things. Like I'll message somebody for like a brief moment to talk on the phone, usually just to set like with a little bit about ourselves, but also mainly to set up the first date. At least that's my intention. I mean, since then also from this story, sometimes I'll even just directly try and set up plans through text. But this time I decided to do it through the phone. So we set up a time to speak, and it happened to be on like a Tuesday night. And it was also my roommate's birthday during that time. So we happened to be for his birthday, we went to Dave & Buster's, and whatever I had scheduled in, like whatever it was, 5 minutes or so to step out to talk to this girl to set up the first date. So I go out of Dave & Buster's, whatever time that was that we were going to talk, and I call her, and immediately she picks up the phone and just starts talking really, really quickly. Yeah, like information dump. And it's like, hello, I was just at dinner with my mom. I knew she was already from out of town. And she was at dinner with her mom, but then she took an Uber back early from dinner to come back to come back to her apartment so that she could get alone time to speak with me. Something like this. I feel like the first minute and a half or so, she was just like explaining what had happened. And I was like, okay, sure. I was like, hi, like, nice to meet you. And whatever. So we start chatting for a few minutes. Like I ask her what she does. She asks me what I do, where I'm originally from. And then after, I don't know what it is, let's say 4 or 5 minutes or so, I say, hey, like, would you like to go get coffee sometime? Like, let's say on a Sunday, or if it wasn't going to be coffee, I like to do morning dates more on early first dates rather than going to like a bar or something. But I also would have been open to that if weekend didn't work for us, like if Sunday didn't work and it was going to be like a weekday night. So she turns to me and she's like, I want to keep talking on the phone. Right, exactly. So my host just made a face. It made a face. My host made a face. And so I was like, in my head, like, part of it already in my head was like, I kind of like to get to know people through a first date, not so much like talk on the phone for, I don't know, how long did she want to talk on the phone for, an hour, 2 hours? So I was like, hey, I tried to like kind of explain that a bit and being like, hey, like I prefer sometimes to go out. She's like, I'm just really busy with my life that I'm not going to be able, I don't know. I like to talk to the people on the phone longer with people first. Sure. Anyways, I also happened to mention, I was like, I'm at my friend's birthday at Dave & Buster's right now. Like, I don't have the time to talk for an hour. I also just was not genuinely interested in talking for that long on the phone to someone. Mm-hmm. So whatever. So we decided, we kind of left it in like a weird space at that point. I knew I was going to message her either later that night or the next day. So I messaged her. So I went back and just hung out with my friends. And then the next day, I messaged her and I was like, hey, I'm not sure how long you want to talk on the phone for, but I'd like to get to know people through getting to meet them in person, like to go get coffee. I also said to her, thinking in my head, maybe she goes on dates where guys take her on dates for like 6 hours. I'm really somebody who goes on first dates like 1 to 2 hours, around that 2 hour realm. Mm-hmm. Especially, and this is just, I'm getting slightly off topic. I feel like when I'm on a date and it's let's say clearly not going well, or it's not that it's not going well, but there's no real vibe, then why drag it on? Yeah. But and let's say you're in a situation where you are clicking. I've also been in scenarios where I'm like, maybe she's just being nice. And if she genuinely likes me, there will be another date. Like, there's no major rush. We met for an hour, 2 hours. Like, I can give her the opportunity if I'm interested in a second date, for her to say that she's not interested in a second date, or a third date. So I kind of briefly said that in a text as well. Like, hey, I was only looking for coffee for like an hour, 2 hours. Like, I wasn't looking to take you on like a 7-hour date.
You said that, sir?
In the text, something like this. Like, hey, I was looking for coffee for like 1 to 2 hours. I don't know if I said directly like the 7-hour part, but
okay.
I was trying to just frame for her, like I was like, going out for coffee for like an hour to 2 hours.
Also, like, she did say like she's really busy, so it makes sense. It's like, it's not like being rude, like, oh, I only want to hang out with you for an hour or two. It's like, oh, I know you're busy. Like, I was just looking for like an hour or two of your time. Right,
exactly. So I send that's what I sent. Anyway, she sends me a text back, and she's like, hey, I can see that we're not going to see eye to eye on this. I'm really busy. I just don't think this is going to work out. So I was like, okay, like I was fine with that, like no problems at all. Like I already, like for me it was like when I had already given out my number at like through my friend setting us up. I feel like I had my friend's mother setting us up. I felt that I'd already basically committed to like a first date. It didn't have to be, but just a lot of just the whole way that I felt about it. Clearly different communications here of what she was expecting. Like I had this image in my head that maybe her parents met and like spoke on the phone and fell in love after like 5-hour phone call. Like I don't know, but that's just. Yeah, I guess not what I was expecting. And I've never had an issue like that. Normally, I've never had somebody be like, oh, let's not go out after talking on the phone. And yeah, that was fine. And then I messaged let's call her Shatran. I messaged her and explained what happened. And she's like, why didn't you just talk on the phone longer? And I was like, hey, look, I was really willing to go out here. Like it wasn't, she was the one who was really not, like, I feel like I really tried, like I was willing to go out on a date. So that was just one of those stories that kind of stick with me because like it's not your average story. Like I said, most of mine tend to be pretty average normally, sometimes different conversations that I can have with people. But again, most people, it's like there's not much of a real story there. So that's one of the things that I can share with you.
So, okay, I'm going to play a little bit devil's advocate.
Sure.
But also at the same time, I see your point as being this is someone you knew who was setting you up.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when I know the person who's setting it up personally, I feel less... I'm just more open to more.
Okay.
Just like, I don't know, like I got set up not that long ago.
Yeah.
And so I will say though, when a guy calls me, I expect to be on the phone for at least like 20 minutes.
Okay.
Like we chat a little bit. If it's a guy from an app, I expect that we're going to talk for probably like 20 minutes is a good amount of time. And if we're vibing, it's like maybe a little longer. But that's more for me to just like, it's not even because I want to talk to someone for 20 minutes. If I'm on the phone with them and I really am just not feeling it, then I'll be like, oh, actually, like my roommate needs me. My friend's here to pick something up. Like, I have to go.
Right.
Or I need to go to bed. I stopped even making excuses. I'm like, well, it was nice talking to you. Have a good night.
Right, which is great.
But it's more so that I can get a vibe of if I want to spend my time going on a date with them.
Right.
But if it's through a friend or somebody that I know that's setting it up, I'm more likely to have the inclination that they're going to be a normal-ish person, that I don't need to, like, do my screening. Like, I use the call as a screening. So, like, I did have it recently that... So, when I set up a call with a guy, I'm setting aside at least, like, 20 minutes to half an hour. Mm-hmm. If the call's shorter than that, fine. But, like, that's the time I'm setting aside for it. Sometimes longer. It depends. So, I got set up probably a couple months ago. And the guy texted me to have a call. I didn't like how he, like, texted me also, which... Again, I looked past this stuff because it was a friend setting it up. He was just like, hi, what time can I call you tonight? I was like, you can't call me tonight. I'm busy. I was like, you can call me tomorrow at this time. Right. Like, don't assume you could call me at a specific day. Like, you should, it's nice that you texted and asked when you could call, but just be like, when works for you in the next couple of days. Right. So I gave him a time, whatever. He calls me and I get on. I'm just a chatty person in general. Also, like, I like to gauge people's personality. Even if I know I'm going on this date because it's a friend setting it up, I'm going to be like, okay, do I want to look cute? Do I think this actually has potential? Like, try to gauge the personality a little bit. Like, is this going to be a complete waste of my time? Right. If I think that it is going to be a complete waste of my time, I'll say no. Smart. And I've said no multiple times after phone calls. Smart. But, so he calls me and... I start chatting. I was like, oh yeah, hey, like whatever, like talking. I didn't like information dump on him, but like I was just like chatting. Sure. I had told him like I can't even remember what I was talking about, but then he like cuts me off. He's like, okay, so when do you want to go out? And I was like, okay, like you could like chat with me for like 10 minutes. Like I get that. I get that you want to be to the point, but it's also like at that point you could just like ask me over text. Like I did set aside time for my night to talk to you on the phone. I hear you. So that's my devil's advocate. I also personally hate talking on the phone. So like when I set aside even 20 minutes to talk on the phone, that's me like having to mentally prepare myself. Like you would probably never know this because I'm so chatty in person. I love talking to people in person.
Right.
But I, like, even my mom, like, I love talking to my mom. I love my mom. We have a great relationship. I hate talking on the phone. So, like, she knows that. I was like, Mom, I'm sorry I didn't call. I text her all the time. I'm like, I just don't want to talk on the phone.
Right.
So, I'm, like, mentally preparing myself. I'm putting myself in a place where, like what she was saying, she's like, I took an Uber back early.
Right.
That's on her, though. She could have communicated, like, oh, actually, I'm out to dinner with my mom tonight.
Right.
Can I either text you when I get back, or can we talk tomorrow night? Like, come up with an alternate time.
Mm-hmm.
That's on her.
Right.
I will say that's on her. But I'm just, like, putting you in, like, a girl's mind. Like, when a guy says he's going to call, I'm at least setting aside 20 minutes. Sometimes,
Sure.
like, that's my hard 20 minutes. Sometimes it's like, okay, I have time, and if the call is going great.
Right.
I would say more from, like, dating app guys, I talk to them for longer, or, like, guys who I don't know.
Right.
Like, when I was on YU Connects.
Right.
Also, all the guys I got on YU Connects were terrible. So, of course, I wanted to talk to them on the phone and have, like, actual conversations before just committing to a date.
Right.
So, that scenario is a little different, but, like, that was just my, like, devil's advocate.
Right. Yeah. No, I understand when she was saying things to me like she's really busy. If it was just like she was just not interested in that as her excuse, fine.
Yeah.
But if it's like she genuinely was too busy to even go on an hour, 2-hour dates, if you take that at face value, it's like I'm personally really not looking to date someone like that at that moment. Like there's just not even enough time to find like on like a Sunday or an evening.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you on that.
So
also, like, if you don't have time to go out on a date, I get it. If it's, like, a high maintenance, like, oh, during the night, like, whatever, but you...
My sister said, she's like, she probably just had, like, really bad acne or something that day and just didn't want to go out that week.
That would be interesting. Like, it could be she had a busy week, but it's also, like, I would just say that. It's like, oh, yeah, I do want to meet this week. And I have this all the time. Like, certain times at work are busier than others, so I'll go through, like, 2-week stretches where I cannot meet during the week. Like, and, like, sometimes I'll end up getting set up with a guy or match with a guy, and he wants to go out, and I'm like, I'm just going to be honest. Like, my weeks are crazy. I could go out on the weekend.
Right.
Or we can wait until after.
Yeah, that's fair. But that's, like, the difference is the communication that was occurring there.
No, she just seemed, like, unreasonable. Like, she seemed like she was just...
I did feel that. Like, I felt like it had to be her way or the highway.
Yeah. Also... I actually did have a guy once who, we had a phone call. This is from YU Connects. Mm-hmm. And I did not end up going out with him. Like, I'm just going to preface it. I didn't actually enjoy talking to him. Mm-hmm. But after our initial phone call, instead of asking me on a date, he asked for a video call. And this was not like during a COVID spike or anything. And nobody was traveling, nothing. But I was like, I just took my time to talk to you on the phone. Why do you need a video call? Like, if he hadn't, I think I did do the video call and then I ended it, but sure. I was so turned off by him asking for a second call.
Right.
Instead of just like being like, okay, so get in your car, come pick me up, take me for a drink, and then like, let's do this.
Right. Yeah.
Also, I didn't like him, so I'm glad it worked out for the best, because like, I probably would have been miserable on a date with him, but... Yeah, that did turn me away. I get it if it's a long distance situation or people are traveling.
Right.
But, and you want to like progress things, or like get a move on it.
Right.
But it makes no sense. Like, especially if you're in the same area, you're willing to go. Like, and if she says, oh, I'm so busy, would you mind coming to my area? Like, I'm sure you would go there. Right. Take her to coffee, like, not that far from where she lives, wherever she wants, like... Yeah, I don't know. So, a little bit of devil's advocate, but I mostly am on your side.
Yeah, sounds good. It's not, in the end, it was just something it's one of those stories that just still stuck with me.
Yeah. No, it's weird. People are weird. Wonder where this girl is in life now. Probably still on the phone.
Still on the phone.
Still on the phone.
Still in the Uber.
Does she have a marriage through her phone? Like.
Exactly.
Okay. Do you want to tell another story?
Sure, I can tell another story. I had planned a total of 3 stories.
Okay.
And I tried to save the best for last.
Yeah,
so listeners, do not pause. Continue for the rest of the podcast. But yeah, I can go for the second story. So
Yeah,
the
and
second
then
story,
then after the second one.
the second story was, I think it's a funny story because it has to do with just like, again, classically miscommunication, but this is more of a funnier story. I don't think it says, maybe it says a little bit of who I am, hopefully in a good way. But this was less of a comment, I think, of the character of either of us, or especially the other side. It was just me misunderstanding something, and then how I had to deal with that. All right, so this one's actually interesting because it was one of my friends wanted to set me up with this girl, and I remember saying that I was interested, and for whatever reason, she was busy with classic case of also being busy with school, but it wasn't the best timing for her. So I was fine. I was like, not a problem. Like, you could reach out if you want, like a few months from now, if that's better for her or whatever, if I'm available. But it was the fact that I was interested and my friend had already decided to set us up. And then my mother, 2 months later or so, and my mom usually doesn't set me up. So when she suggests someone, I tend to take it more seriously. She had also suggested this person to me like 2 months later. So I was like, yeah, like if now two people, my mom did not know my friend. So like they came around to this person completely two different ways. So I was like, you know what, like that could be a sign. Like if two people who know me are thinking that. And anyhow, so I said yes to this date, and maybe it was 2 months later at the point where now this girl was in a situation that she could date. But she happened to, unlike the previous story, we were in the same town. This one, she was in a different city. And so she told me whatever the city is. I looked up the city, and I see, hey, it's only like half hour away from me. I don't have a car, so I use public transportation. I was like, oh, I'll make a day. Like, wherever I end up going, like, whatever be fine. Mm-hmm. So, we went and we set up the date. It happened to be like, when we set up the date, especially because of her school schedule and the fact that I needed to travel and whatnot, it was something like maybe 3 weeks out. It could even be 4 weeks out when we planned the date, which was fine. Like, okay, sure. Then, and we planned it for like a Sunday. It was like meet up for coffee. And I remember on Saturday night, I can't, there's a part of it like something triggered me in the sense to realize that I had the wrong location. You know what it was? Because I think that because I was commuting, we had decided that she was going to choose the coffee shop because it was her area, which I was happy to look up as well. But like she suggested, and it would have been funny. You'll see in a second why if I suggested. And I looked it up, and it was in a completely different area than what I had thought where I was going, and it was not half an hour from where I live, but like an hour and 45 minutes from where I live. And that was like driving. That was like, so I looked it up, and I'm on the East Coast, and there's the famous East Coast Amtrak. So I would probably have to take the Amtrak. But with this, going to this place and meeting up, and I could have somewhat changed the tea shop. Like, I was already thinking of explaining to her what had occurred, and not necessarily meeting up midway, but somewhere closer where the Amtrak gets off, which would have only been like 15 minutes from the same location where she is. And I know that she has a car. But it was like all of a sudden going to become like this crazy like day experience where I was going to take 3 hours into this other city, and then just like straight up the cost would have been way more than the date I would have expected. It would have been like a last second Amtrak.
Yeah, those are expensive.
Right. And it's like, it's just like, I wouldn't have planned to do that. Yeah. And I was like, okay, fine. And then I was talking to my sister and I explained the situation to my sister, and she's like, you know how many times my friends have canceled date or postponed dates, even like a night before? Like, it's not the end of the world. You can do something like that. But I spoke to my mom about it, and she was like, oh, why didn't you go and pick up your brother's car, who lives half an hour away? And he can potentially lend you his car, see if he can do that, and it'll just help you with this entire process. Like, you can come and go where you want, like you can go right to the coffee shop so my brother was kind enough to lend me his car, and like we figured that all out. But it was just like this crazier moment of being like, what the heck am I gonna do? Or am I just gonna is this date just gonna take over like my entire Sunday, like 7 hours? Like, I'm gonna end up traveling for like 6 hours, like be on an hour date, 2 hour date. So I ended up being able to get my brother's car and went on the date. It was like a fine date. It didn't end up having a future. Again, I thought it was this is a scenario where I was interested, she wasn't interested, but that, like, which is completely fine. But again, like, props to both my mom and my friend to see that. And yeah, no, but it was just like this funny aspect of like trying to figure out my travel plans.
So wait, did you tell her
Yeah,
what
I definitely
happened?
explained her the story once I was on the date. Like, why the heck not? I didn't tell her before. I would have if I was going to either cancel for sure. I would have explained what happened. Like, hey, I messed up. I just thought that I was in a different city. I'm happy to meet up with you, but now that I know where it is, I have to like plan better. Or had I, which I was not, I was more reluctant to do, but if I had just like sucked it up and just paid for a more expensive Amtrak and like ended up in a different location, I would have asked her, hey, can we move the tea shop to like the city over next to you where the Amtrak would stop? Mm-hmm. That I thought about asking, but I was more ready to like postpone it than do that at the moment. So I was like, let me figure out my side before just like posing random questions to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you had known, do you think you would have like tried to FaceTime her before or something instead? Or you think you would have still
I
gone
would have made
right
a
away?
day out of it because I was going from like to another major city. I feel like I would have like just gone to that major city and worked in the fact that I'd probably have like an hour, 2 hour, whatever date on in the middle of that.
Okay.
That's
but,
probably
like,
what I would have done.
made a plan in the city.
And right. And I would have just bought my ticket like way in advance. That's what I feel like I would have done. Yeah. Gone explore.
It's interesting. I don't know. I guess it's like interesting hearing the other perspective because like as a female, at least from what I like a guy to come to me.
Mm-hmm.
But like I'm in the city, so it's not
Right.
It's not crazy. Sometimes guys come from out of the city.
Right.
But if they do, they have a car,
Mm-hmm.
they take the train, but it's like
Right.
it's not as big of a deal.
Right.
But for a guy having to go out of the city,
Right.
like it's
Without a
just
car.
without a car.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you date a lot out of the city?
I've dated a little bit. I guess we'll say we're in New York City. So sometimes it's towards Jersey, but more commonly it's been to like Long Island.
Yeah. So what
but
do you
Long
what do
Island-
you do when that happens?
So I work in Queens,
Okay.
and I can sometimes, if I'm already in Queens, that helps. Maybe I can get a ride with a coworker towards Long Island when some of my coworkers live out there.
So you just like
I've done, yeah, I in towards New Jersey, which is more not as commonly. Yeah, I don't do it all the time, but like this was a scenario where like two people had suggested her to me, so I was like,
Yeah.
you know what, like I feel like this is like worth a shot.
yeah.
Um,
No, my question was just like more
Sure.
of a general like
Right,
because like
right.
it was just like an interesting thing
I-
that
yeah. Mm-hmm.
like made me think of that because I've heard guys talk about it and I've heard of guys who like rent a car every single time and I'm like that's like crazy. Like I just personally would never expect that of a guy.
I don't think I was the guy who was like not willing to just draw. I didn't really, not that I wasn't willing, but like I more reluctantly was going to just drop on a more expensive Amtrak. I would have paid for an Amtrak in advance because like there's a difference. Like it would have been like 3 times the price if I bought it. Like,
Yeah,
right away thing.
they get expensive.
And I would have been up at like 5 a.m. Like it was crazy.
Yeah.
Or maybe a little bit late, but like 6 a.m. on like a Sunday. Like again, knowing me, it's like had I planned it, whatever, I would have just been like, had I known in it like advance and had myself prep it, then I would have done it. But like just to, like wing it like that on a Saturday night and like with it all, I was just like, I'm happy. The solution, getting my brother's car, just was so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was just, yeah, it was a lot more manageable, and I got to see my brother, who has a little kid.
Win-win. It's a win-win.
Mm-hmm.
And you got a car for the day,
Just got to see my niece. Yeah. So that
which
that
is a rarity in the city.
Exactly. Yeah, I got to drive.
Okay. I feel like I had another question about the story, but now I'm not remembering.
Well, if it comes up again, you're not allowed to ask it. You've missed your opportunity. Now you can
missed
definitely
the
ask it.
Oh, I was gonna say it's funny that you mentioned like the whole being set up, like more than one person wanting to set you up with the same person that are like totally unrelated.
Right.
This is like going back to my college days. This isn't a real story because nothing happened.
Yeah.
But there was this one guy, and he just like, I had no idea who he was. We went to the same school, and like the school wasn't so big, so like, I don't know. I knew a bunch of the people, and we had mutual friends, but I had never seen him before. And then all of a sudden, someone suggested him to me, And then I saw him everywhere. And then over the next, like, 2 years after that, I think a total of 4 people suggested it.
Oh, wow.
Like, they didn't know it. They were all different people at different times in different places.
Wow.
He never went out with me.
Oh.
But it was fine.
Okay.
It was fine. He's married now. We're, like...
Hopefully he's not happy. No, I'm totally kidding. Totally kidding.
Listen, he just would have had a good date with me, you know?
Right.
But it's fine. Like, we're so then after I saw him all the time, we became friendly. Not friends, but like friendly. Cause like, I don't even remember how we actually like got introduced.
Yeah.
But it was like way after the fact. And I was like, is this awkward? Like, do you think he knows that like 4 people try to set us up? But
like, imagine on his side, it was like 10 people trying to set you guys up.
That like just didn't tell me. It could be. I feel like at some point though, you should just like go out with the person.
Yeah.
If so many people say it.
Right.
Like what you said, it's like, okay, if 2 people said it.
And for me, there was like respected people.
Yeah.
Like 2 people whose opinions I do respect when it comes to this stuff.
So mine were also like they were like random friends or acquaintances that I knew from like random places. It's just funny. It was just funny that you said that because I had that once in my life and like he didn't go out with me. It's fine. We're way past like there's nothing to even move past. Like I didn't care. He's just a guy who like I kind of knew after a bunch of people suggested him. But yeah, I just always wondered. I was like, do you think he knows that I know? But
right. Should we still ask him?
I don't think he remembers who I am.
Fair.
Like, I don't remember the last time I talked to him.
Right.
Or saw him.
Right.
Like I said, we were friendly. I think we ended up at, like, the same Shabbat meal a couple times. Or something like that.
Right. Like, he passed you the challah.
Maybe.
Right.
Yeah, like, maybe we're Facebook friends, but, like, not phone number level, you know? But also, I don't even remember if we're Facebook friends. Is it, like, that's not even a thing anymore. But, like, when I was in college, it was. So, okay. But, anyway. So, I know you guys are waiting for Yoni's last big story. But let's take a break to hear a word from our sponsors. And then Yoni can tell us when we come back. So, we'll be right back.
Sticky Situations is sponsored by Corona Crush. Are you tired of swiping on dating apps? Tired of guessing whether the cute guy or girl you keep seeing around is Jewish and or single? Then you need to run, not walk, to join Corona Crush. Corona Crush is a Jewish organization working to create Jewish couples always. Corona Crush has over 30 confirmed engagements, over 22,000 members from all over the world, and has set up over 50,000 speed dates. Join the Corona Crush Facebook group and post yourself or have a friend post you and see who reaches out. Fill out the survey to sign up for virtual speed dating events happening every other week. Corona Crush is 100% free and 100% Jewish. Worst case, you end up with some stories of your own. Best case, you find the love of your life. Try it out today. Here on Sticky Situations, we tend to focus on bad dating stories, but sometimes dates do go well and lead to proposals and weddings. Who would have thought? And what do all of those require, you might be asking? Well, the answer is flowers. Who doesn't want flowers from someone they've been seeing? Don't forget, flower petals and bouquets needed for proposals. And that's even before all the flowers that go into weddings. Sticky Situations is sponsored by Primrose Flower Shop. In my opinion, Primrose is the coolest flower shop around and has the best customer service to fulfill all of your floral needs. Primrose offers a range of services from your basic bouquets to subscription services where you can get flowers delivered once a week. They deliver all over the tri-state area, including Manhattan. Primrose does weddings, bar and bat mitzvahs, and other simchas. I've personally been to a wedding where Primrose did the flowers, and the work they did was beyond gorgeous. Primrose additionally offers in-store proposals, including a romantic setup with candles and music. Primrose is located at 2922 Avenue M in Brooklyn, and the phone number is 929-376-9815. You can also follow Primrose on Instagram at PrimroseNY. So, if you can't get someone out of your head, buy them some flowers from Primrose. They'll either love it or they'll find you really creepy. But regardless, the flowers will be out of this world.
And we are back. Okay, Yoni, and you kept everyone waiting. So, shall we hear your, including myself? He's been hyping up this story, and I keep telling him I don't want to hear it yet because I want to wait until, like, I want to hear it live in recording, but I've been told it's a very, very good story.
Yeah, she's a good host, and she's a patient host. All right. So here is that story. Where does it start? Okay, so, and it's funny, we were talking earlier about New Jersey versus Long Island. This date actually happened to be in Long Island. Again, most of my dates happen to be in the city, but these happen not to be. Or maybe that's how you get your stories, you go out of the city. So I had decided to meet up, and this was in an evening. We still met up at like a coffee shop or whatever it was. It was not a bar. And not that I wouldn't go to a bar, but happened to not be a bar. This was through YU Connects. All right.
Oh, okay.
This one was through
We're already setting the crazy stage.
Already setting... Oh, yeah. All right. Although happens to be... YU Connects was pretty good for me in a lot of ways.
Because you're a guy.
Because
you're a pretty normal guy.
Because I'm a pretty normal guy. That's a very nice thing to say. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. So...
None of the guys I ever got set up with were anywhere as normal as you are. So
okay,
that's just putting it into reference,
right.
The female experience.
I appreciate the kind words. So I got set up, and it's good that I went there because it's part of the story that I need to explain actually. So I was on YU Connects, and I had two connectors on YU Connects, and even before they set me up, and I'm going slightly off topic, but it is important, I think. I actually talked to I reached out to my connectors and was like, hey, I'd like to talk to you and tell you about the different type, like a little bit of who I am and what I believe I'm looking for. And I really did like my two connectors. And I thought they were very good, and they really tried and didn't just send me like absolutely random. I thought there was some logic to what they were doing, some sense. Okay, so here... The story starts with one of my connectors reaching out to me. And so this woman reaches out to me and she says, hey, like, I saw your profile and I think we'd be a good match for this girl. So I remember looking at the profile and was like, okay, I was looking at some of it, I was like, you know what, this is maybe not a terrible idea. And so actually, there's even more. As I'm going into the story, I even realize that even prior to this, somebody, I don't know if it was my connector or someone else, had actually sent me this connection, which I had accepted. And then the girl just never, it was just there was no response. And so when the connector reached out to me, who's not my connector, she asked me about this person, and I actually remember responding, hey, I actually accepted this person, I just never got a response back from them. Whatever, like I forgot about it. I just noticed it when they resent me the profile. So the connector explained to me that she was busy. Look at this, with the women being busy of these stories. Maybe that's a bad sign if they're super busy and people want me to set them up with me. Although I should say that the traveling story had nothing to do with the girl. So I said, sure. Oh, okay. So she said, oh, she's not busy now. Would you be willing to go out with her? So I said, you know what? Sure. Like, not a problem. So anyways, now this time this girl accepted, and the number, like in the way YU Connects works, our numbers got swapped, and I set up a time. Again, I don't remember now if I just texted her to be up with her or called or whatever it was. Regardless, that's not where the story ends. It's not like I call her and it didn't. We ended up setting up a date, and then I ended up going into Long Island to meet up with her, and it was a nice date. I remember, I think the date again also was like an hour and a half, 2 hours. It was like your average standard day. It was on also a weeknight. Like, I'd work the next day. The date seemed to go well, and afterwards, whatever, I guess it was either maybe the next morning. I usually don't wait too long if I'm interested. If I'm interested or not interested, I usually will follow up. And so I followed up and said, hey, like, I had a nice time. Would you be interested in going out again? And she said that for her, that she wasn't interested. So I said, sure, like, no problem. Okay, fine. You would think the story would end there. Like, everything was so normal. Like, there's no intriguing facts. Okay, end of story. One would think. All right, this is where this story starts. In a sense, that was like...
that was the prequel.
That was just, okay. A few months later... Okay, so happened to be on that date. What occurred was I found out that she had a sibling, and there's some key parts here that I can't really leave out. She has a sibling who has special needs, and happens to be also of a sibling who's special needs, but that's not exactly the story. But she has a sibling who's special needs was dating somebody who a childhood friend of mine's sibling who has special needs as well.
Oh wow!
Right. Oh wow! Right. So and actually that's part of the beautiful part of the story, and they ended up. So this girl and I went out, and we made that connection actually during that encounter, during the date. I don't know why I call it encounter. But a few months later, they got engaged, and it was her brother who got engaged to my friend's sister. And we're good family friends, like, of the other side. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm trying to... I feel like if I can give them names, it might make things sound easier. Anyways, my mother was at the engagement party. Okay? And the mother of the girl and her
and
son,
the groom,
the groom to be, she goes up to my mother and says, hey, like you have a wonderful son. My daughter went out with your son, and my mom knew this because it was just a funny story that like occurred, that like we went out and her sibling like got married, now they're married, but her just that this story had occurred.
Yeah.
And so my mom had actually known that I went out with this girl, but my mom was never going to bring it up.
Yeah.
Not that it's like a terrible thing to bring up, but it's just not something you normally bring up.
Yeah.
Especially if it was a one and done date. Mm-hmm. So the mother says to her, oh no, like I thought, like looking at your son's profile and stuff, I thought like I searched and really thought that he was like a good person and like really dug for it or whatever it was. And they were even talking about, oh, my daughter didn't want to go out with him again because he kept the date too short.
What?
Yeah. All of a sudden, like, this is where the story really, like I said, really starts. I just remember my mom laughing. My mom was like, well, we raised them that way, not to, like, take people on 6-hour dates. Like,
yeah.
And it's also just not my style to go on, like, that long of a date. So, exactly for the scenario that occurred. Like, I went out on this date with this girl for, like, an hour and a half, 2 hours, or whatever it was. I thought it went well. And I was like, if there's a second date, like, there'll be a second date. And I felt it was a scenario where I thought we clicked. And clearly I was wrong. So in a lot of ways, I was happy that we didn't drag it out for more than that. But yeah, she said that she wanted her daughter to keep going out with me, but that she just felt that she was not happy that it was so short or something. So she did not, right? Like for me, I just kind of read that into being like, there's a lot other stuff going on here, more than like she doesn't even know what's going. Like this girl, I don't even think really knows what's going on. But when my mother told me this, like a flag went off in my head. I was like, what's this mother's name? So I jump back to my YU Connects and I look at it, and the last name is her maiden name, or a cat.
So this girl was using her mom as her connector?
So I don't. That's not.
Or she was your connector.
I don't. No, she was not my connector. This girl was not you. I don't.
Her mom's the one who set it up.
Yes, I think
that's not allowed. By the way,
absolutely.
Because I had that also. Someone's like they had the same last name. I think I reported it.
Right. So the same last name is one thing, but this is even more deception because it wasn't.
No, that's like that's bad. And that's a no-no.
Right. This was immediately. Did I feel like so much? The word is like I'm trying to think of the feeling that I had, but so much deception. I had a lot of I really felt deceived. Like, I felt really, really deceived, and I was just like, And I was like, this is so not right. I was like, thank God it was a scenario where, like, I'm honest with the people. Like, I usually tell people, like, other times if I didn't think that it worked out, like, if I said no, like, I try to give potential, like, more than, if it's more than just I didn't feel it, but I feel like I tend to know myself well. Like, other things of what I didn't think went well, like, maybe I thought that it was, like, a more religious thing, or I'll straight up just be like, sometimes, like, I wasn't attracted to this person. Like, I'll tell my connector these things sometimes. So, like, that's a scary thing that, like, thank God that was not the scenario. Like, imagine if I said to this girl, like, I wasn't interested because I wasn't attracted to that girl. Like, and I told that to her mother. Like, it was like, who knows, not only that, the private things that I could have relayed. Thankfully,
Yeah,
like,
and then it would go straight to her
daughter. Scenario where I was interested and just she wasn't. So I looked like there was nothing I could have said to her mother. But then there's so much more wrong with that, because it's like, what about the scenario where it starts working well, we start going out, like, eventually a long-term successful relationship, like, I'm going to meet her mother, and, like, I'm going to be like, what the heck? Like, you want to start a relationship on such deception? So I actually did. I was so mad. I was like, I talked to my mom. I was like, if this happened to my sister, she would be livid. So I actually wrote, like, an entire thing out to YU Connects, just being like,
good.
Don't use the direct name because of this person.
You should have.
Like, there are a lot of anxious. We didn't want to go that direction just in case. We didn't want to, like, dox her because there was the relationship with my family.
Oh,
my friends.
right.
So we didn't want to dox her then, and my mom was like, if you want to do it, just wait like 3 months or so. But I was just like, I want to do this now so I don't forget, kind of thing. And, like, there's a lot of anger inside of me about what's occurred and just felt very wronged. Mm-hmm. So I did message YU Connects and just be like, there are a lot of anxious mothers. Like, if you want, I can try and find it on my phone to see what exactly I wrote. But it was, in short, was like, there are a lot of anxious mothers out there, and just like I kind of explained a little bit of the story. Not so much about that I went out with this girl. I skipped that. I just said, like, another friend's mother. So the girl's mother tried to set us up, and we can talk about the analysis of, like, what occurred with that girl. That's, I don't think, the interesting parts of it, but it was just like, that was the part that was just so wrong to me.
Yeah.
That's the gist of the story. There was nothing else that happened after that, but yeah, it was a pretty bad feeling. I just remember going on walks, just being so, like...
No, I was mad too. So when it happened to me, the guy was terrible. I think I said no to the guy, maybe, or I maybe had a phone call and then said no. I definitely didn't go out with him.
Right.
But, like, I could tell. I'm like, I think I just said no. I really can't remember what happened. But I remember seeing the matchmaker's name, and I'm like, this isn't allowed.
Right. No, it's definitely not allowed.
Like, that's uncomfortable. And it's like, okay, so why are you trying to set up your, like, weird brother or weird son with me? Like, I want to go out with your weird son. Like, it's one thing.
But
like,
even if they're not weird, it's just like...
No, it's just like a level of deception, especially because it was a different name. It's just... And how she told your mom, like, oh, I really, like, looked in his profile.
Right, like I dug and found him. Like,
that's
he's
a red
gem.
flag. It's like... It's like also... I don't really talk to my parents so much about dating. But I definitely wouldn't show them some guy's profile who I was going to go out with.
Right.
Like, I mean, first of all, they don't want to see that because they're all bad. And that's why I quit YU Connects. But no, it's just bad. Also, to the point of, like, her not wanting to go out, just, I know you said that's not your focus at all, but, like, I see that as a red flag in a girl, too, because she didn't want to go out again because the date wasn't long enough.
Yeah.
It's just, like...
I mean, it was already over. It's not just a flag. It's like, I didn't even, like, think about that stuff.
No, but it's still, like...
And I also didn't know that until way later. Yeah, no, of course.
So, basically, the mom was saying she would have gone out if it was a longer date. But
I don't think that's actually true. I don't think...
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like,
you think she was just, like, coming up with, like...
Yeah, I don't really... If I, like, really thought about it, what I think is what really occurred... and Josh, also remember, I did go out I did speak to this girl for 2 hours. I did feel, if I had to guess, already, like, very controlling mom. I'm not saying, I don't know about if her parents are that sense, but I got the impression that, like, her mom was forcing her to go on dates.
Oh, okay.
So she really was just not even a place to date. So even if she liked me or didn't like me, she just really wasn't, like... She didn't want to go. That's what she just
Was she, like, really young?
And no, we were the same age.
Okay.
But sometimes, like, relationships are tough for people. Like, especially, again, to the audience, like, would you, if you didn't feel that you were ready to go, I'm sure there could be some of your listeners who are not ready to date. But would you want, like, your mother forcing you to go on a date, or like just not,
No.
or like nudging you until you would
No.
go on a date? Like
Not at
that's
all.
already just like if you knew that. Another way of posing the question to the audience, to the listener, would you want to go out with somebody who you knew that like that's why they said yes to you? Like it has nothing to do with you, and maybe they are a good person, but like that dynamic's already just like
No.
yeah, like
Not at all.
yeah. Doesn't sound like.
But like
the
also
healthiest
it just oh yeah, no, I have that boundary. I have very clear boundaries with my parents when it comes to dating. My parents are awesome, guys. Listen to their episodes. I did record with both of them.
Your parents are
so
awesome.
like yeah,
vouch.
Yoni has met my parents. My parents are really cool. I do have episodes with each one, so that's a little plug. Go back and listen to them because I feel like those are underrated and they're actually really funny. I've probably gotten the most like positive feedback from those episodes. But what I was going to say is I find it interesting that with the whole like short date and like if it's good,
it was like a 2-hour date.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
feel like,
short
I feel like 2 hours
For a
isn't
first
that-
date.
2 hours is not short. Like I think I keep hearing places that like it's good to keep the first date like shorter.
Yeah,
because
especially if you've never even met before.
yeah, because then that leaves room for growth.
Yeah.
Like if you go on like a 6-hour date, even if you do both like each other, like you leave something to like want more. Like I say this as somebody who goes on very long dates just because I talk a lot. So if someone can also talk with me, like
Right.
it just tends to like
That's good
go
too.
on.
Right.
But it's like something that I want to be more conscious of, even if I do like the person. But yeah, the mom getting
Yeah, I know. Oh,
it's just like icky.
what was the other thing that it was like? It also just showed me that like the mother like clearly didn't have my best interests.
No.
Like it was so for her own fulfilling of trying to get her kid set up, I guess, and married. Like that was so clear, and it's like it's unfortunately a very immature way of looking at things. It's like don't tell me that like these are like the most personal things of our lives, like who we eventually would like find a more serious relationship with somebody. And the fact that it's just being like, oh, well, like the way that was handled, like already with deception, like it's so like it's like a black flag. It's not even a red flag.
Yeah.
like,
I mean, she could have told you from the beginning too, like, oh, by the way, this is my daughter.
right? It's like
Which
at
is
least the
still, like-
honesty would have been there. It's still like a problem. It's like you know what I'm going to say to the crowd for my Datilumi thing, like. These people need more emuna. Like they just need like you can't control to that level. I think like maybe I'm wrong and shouldn't say that, but that's part of my feeling sometimes. It's like they're taking like on a little bit too much control,
Yeah.
like too much. Like God does run the world at the end of the day, and we still do our Ashtad. Like I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but like this is more than 100%. This is like 150s, 200%.
For those of you who don't know what Hishtalu means, it's like you do your portion, you do your work towards it.
Yeah.
But we still have to like believe in God that He's gonna make things happen for
Yeah.
us. We have to like do the work and put in the effort, but at the end of the day, it's out of our control.
Right. Exactly.
So
Well
we
said.
have to believe. But yeah, I don't know. I'm really not into parents being super involved in the first place. Like, I don't know. I think just because like my relationship with my parents is like that, like if I want them to be involved and I ask them to be involved in something, they'll do whatever I need them to do.
Right.
And they'll offer to help.
Right.
Like my mom has offered to help with dating. I'm like, Mom, how are you gonna help me? You don't know anyone. Like you don't live in New York. You don't
Right.
you don't know things. Like if you find me a guy, I'll go out with him. But like
Right.
also like I don't think you can. But just in general with things, if I need help with something, my parents will offer or I will ask and they're more than willing to help me, but they also know when to like let me be and do my own thing.
Right.
And I think not everyone is as blessed to have parents who respect boundaries like that, but I just don't like that.
It really is a blessing. I think that I do think there's a lot of healthy marriages out there, and there are a lot of parents that have healthy boundaries with their kid, and it's, what you're just saying is respect. Like your parents respect you, and they're there to help you and support you. And I feel the same way about my family, but like I'm getting like a little bit off topic here, but I feel like growing up, I'm saying a little bit cliche, but in my experience, I think I'm very, very blessed to have some like a great family, And like what you see though as you grow up, like the certain what you would say are issues or problems or like things that bother you. And let's say they really are things that you're like, when I get older, I'm not going to do those kind of things. And let's say sometimes there are there's a lot of things flying like around, and parents can't be perfect. And like, so you'll notice that there's parts that are flawed. Yeah. And you notice these flaws. And they are flaws. And even when you get older, they're just as big flaws as they were when you grew up. But I think what was like really eye-opening, especially as I got into my 20s and into dating and learning about other people's pasts, like some of the issues, I would say flaws or troubles or struggles that like other people go through. Like I didn't understand what big meant. Like like all of a sudden I had things to compare to. I was like, whoa, like the flaws that I didn't like were very small. Like yeah. they're still just as big. They're still as in that sense, but I didn't have anything to compare it to. So yeah. I think it's like what they're saying, like you own, like the cliche thing that I'm trying to say is that the issues, you don't realize that you think that your big issues were big issues, but they end up just being small issues.
Yeah.
When you see other big issues. So like that definitely has been eye-opening. And right, because I do, at the same time, I think there's a lot of healthy marriages and healthy families. There are also your fair share of non. Like I don't know what the percentages are, but if I had to guess, it could really be half. Like I think that maybe there's 50% of marriages that are really good out there, maybe another 50% or either broken families or not, or more in the bigger realm. I don't really know. It's hard to know.
It's just more of like you never know what's going on the inside.
Right.
Also, just like the whole back to the parent-child relationship. Like, if the mom is that controlling in the dating process, like, what's she gonna be like for the entirety of your relationship? Like, I don't know. Sometimes, like, I'm afraid of like. I think because my mom is like so chill and so cool, and like I have a sister-in-law, and my mom is a really good mother-in-law to her. Like, super chill. Like minds her own business, but like is there when needed.
Right.
I'm like low-key a little bit afraid that I won't get such a chill mother-in-law.
Right.
But I don't know. That's like that, but like setting yourself up for that, like.
Right, exactly. Run away, run the other direction. Something that also does kind of stick in my head that I in no way am justifying this to justify what the mother did, as you can see the side that I've taken on this. But there's also a part of me that is like, okay, let's say you want to say that this mother is over-controlling or whatever. I don't know her life story as well. But in some ways, there are a part of me that was like, okay, she does have a special needs son. Mm-hmm. And to my understanding, she really went out of her way and like did a tremendous amount for him and like helped also really find this other special needs girl. And like they're married now. Like that's unbelievable. Like always a marriage is amazing, but like that's like really, really like it's easier, like more tangible to say like that's unbelievable. So there could be some like in some ways like somebody's non-balanced in the way of the control aspect, and maybe she's like super over controlling. There are certain ways I can see it as maybe it did benefit one of her kids' lives.
Yeah.
But we see that sometimes it's like whoa for the average person. For us, that was like way off kilter. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it just goes to being like you need to know what that specific child needs.
Well said.
Like I don't know, even in school.
Look at us parents.
Like even in my family, like I have a brother, and even like the two of us need different things from our parents. Like when we were in school, I was on top of my schoolwork. I was on top of my homework. Sometimes I needed help from my dad with like certain like science classes or things like that, but I would always ask for my dad's help. But my parents knew that I was getting my homework done. Right. I was studying for my test. I was doing well in school. I was on top of it. So they weren't like so on top of me because they would see my report cards. They went to parent-teacher conferences. They knew I was fine. And they saw me doing what I was supposed to do. My brother, on the other hand, was not like that in school. And he did not do his homework. And he did not study. So like my parents had to be on top of him about studying.
Yeah, he was so lazy.
I mean, yes, but I'm just saying, like different kids need different things, and like that comes to dating, that comes to any aspect of life. The school thing was just like my example. Like I didn't need that, but my brother needed that. Or like sometimes my mom used to joke with me because I'm older that she didn't know how to do things because I didn't need her to help. and then she like learned all the stuff because she had to help my brother. Yeah, that's not to insult my brother, even though it is.
I want to just, for the audience, happens to be that I know Rachel's brother, a nice little nudge at him if he listens to the podcast.
He does not listen to the podcast.
Okay, but we're going to make him listen to this podcast.
He's not supportive.
This part of the podcast.
He's not.
We'll send him a snippet.
He's not a supportive brother. But you could tell him to listen to the episode.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so I don't know. That's my take on like. But I think also anyone meddling too much is like too much. But
right.
Yoni brought up like an interesting topic while we were offline that I just thought would be like a little interesting tidbit to share since we have a little bit more time left of the episode before we wrap up. And I am kind of familiar with it. I just don't remember it as much. But Yoni was telling me that he's really into like attachment theory. And I know it's come up in the podcast before and it's like a very interesting topic with dating relationships. So I'm going to give Yoni the floor to talk.
I prepped Rachel and mentioned if the opportunity presents itself, it's something that I'm very interested in and happy to talk about. For those who know what attachment theory, for those who don't, let's start with those. Let's say no one knows, you've never even heard of attachment theory before. To me, I think it's become so fundamental. Let me even see, a better way of explaining this is if anyone knows what when someone asks you what your Roman Empire is. Are you familiar with the term?
Yes.
Are you familiar? Okay.
I am. I watch a lot of TikTok.
TikTok. Okay, so I don't even have TikTok, but Roman Empire, I think, is a great example here. Again, I'm first going to explain Roman Empire and then how that relates to me about attachment theory. Roman Empire was this TikTok, stop me where I'm wrong there. Yeah. Roman Empire is this TikTok where women would ask their partners...
Yeah, or any men in their life.
Any men in their life, how often they think about the Roman Empire. And they were getting these crazy answers like, at least like 3 times a week. Or like several times a day or like a couple times a month. Like way, way more than you would have ever anticipated. That was this TikTok trend going around. Actually, I haven't seen the trend, but I know the concept. Yeah. So when somebody says, what's your Roman Empire? It's like, what's something that you think about way more than somebody would have ever anticipated that you think about it? Yeah. Is that not a terrible idea? So I can say that I think about attachment theory or like my understanding of this theory, a lens in my life that I'm able to view the world with. It's definitely several times a week, like probably at least once a day.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been a lot of or just a way that it's helped me really understand parts of relationships that were so not the way that I approached them, not the way that I was raised, not the way I read my own understanding of the world into situations. It helped me learn things about situations that I would have never, and I'll explain, I got to get more tangible. So attachment theory. What is attachment theory? So attachment theory is a study that occurred, the theory came from a study that occurred where a young child was in the room with one of their caregivers, most commonly their mother, and the mother would leave the room and then enter the room. And when the mother entered the room, they saw different responses to how the child reacted. That was the key moment. So when the mother, and there's this idea that we have like, so when the mother would leave the room, 2 of the 3 major types of attachment styles, there's the 3 major attachment styles are anxious, avoidant, and secure. The anxious type and the secure type both showed visible signs of distress when the mother left the room. And the avoidant seemed to continue to play with their toys as if nothing had happened. But when they also happened to analyze the avoidant child or baby's brain as the mother left the room, and also the avoidant showed just as high levels of stress as the other 2 types. When the mother entered the room, so the avoidant continued to kind of ignore their caregiver, their mother, and continued playing with their toys. The secure was easier to calm down, seemed to be okay. Once they realized that mom was back, would then go back to playing with their toys. And the anxious was still very hard to calm down. Almost like they didn't forgive mother in a way. Or still like... So we see... What happens is they would see these children, and they analyze them how they reacted in romantic relationships. And I even see it more in not just romantic relationships, but in relationships in general. How they interacted with romantic partners later in their life. And what they saw was a certain theme that secures and secure tends to come from when the parents are consistent with their child. When the child would cry out more times than not, the parents tried to suit the child's needs. Not every time. It's about consistency. So it's like, but it drove the child had this underlying feeling of that I'm safe, that my emotions are okay to express, that I can be dependent on someone else, and that things are going to be okay. When the parent was more inconsistent with the child, we saw more the two insecure types come up, the anxious and the avoidant. You with me so far?
Yeah.
All right. So, and we've seen to be that the secure types tend to think highly. They tend to have a higher self-esteem because they have this more secure base that they're able to that they're okay, that their home is a strong place that they can go out and explore the world. And the versus the avoidant and the anxious so the anxious would tend to have lower self-esteem. Let me finish with the secure. So the secure tends to have higher self-esteem, and they also tend to think highly of themselves and think highly of others. The anxious tends to think lowly of themselves and highly of others, while the avoidant tend to think highly of themselves and lowly of others. And some of the defining features of the avoidant is the way that when their parents were inconsistent with them, they learned, okay, I am alone. I need to take care of myself. So they learn to become fiercely independent. In some ways can be good in small aspects, but it's a point where it's like, as soon as they start feeling dependency, they can get scared. There's this idea of fear of intimacy coming from an avoidant. If I get too close to somebody, they could really hurt me. Which can also happen with the anxious as well, versus the secure tends to be more trusting. But for me, it was really interesting. I had been in a relationship several years ago. I'd been in two relationships where there were, I would say, attachment in them that spanned several months, these relationships. And the more recent one, I learned a lot about, I didn't myself really fear intimacy, and it occurred to me afterwards, and as I went through my healing process post the breakup, that my partner did fear intimacy. And it's, again, I didn't understand that. So as I was explaining beforehand how I use this a lot now, is that I would just project how I would act in certain scenarios, and then when she would act in very different ways, and really pull back, even though that there was a true connection there, genuine connection, it was that fear. And it really helped me move on and forgive her in a lot of ways, seeing that it was a way of protecting herself. Not necessarily even from me, but from some of her past experiences. So learning a lot about that fear of intimacy, and I focused on the avoidant. I didn't talk about the anxious. The anxious, you'll see classically, the more stereotypical is that they're always trying to get closer to their partner. And so they're worried that they have a big fear potentially of abandonment. That my partner's, I'm not good enough. I have a low self-esteem. I put them on a pedestal. I have to keep running because they're going to leave me. And that's my big fear is of abandonment. So they struggle with that, with self-soothing. So when an anxious and an avoidant pair up together, you can get this unfortunate, sometimes nasty dynamic where they kind of assert their own realities. The anxious thinks lowly of themselves and highly of others, while the avoidant thinks lowly of their partner and highly of themselves. So they're asserting their own realities.
I'm only laughing because, like...
You can kind of see it?
No, because I feel like I'm more of an avoidant type.
Yeah.
Like, I'm probably between avoidant and secure depending on the situation.
Right. Okay. And it is a spectrum, I should say.
And not even in, like, relationships,
right.
but I have friends or have had friends or people in my life that are anxious.
Right.
Anxious attachment. And, like, that doesn't go well because I really don't like...
Right.
I don't like the neediness. And I don't like that. So, like, I see where that dynamic does not work.
Right. Meaning
just from, like, my own personal, like, friendships, people in my life, it's just, like, it gets frustrating because it's like, okay, like, it's fine.
Right.
But, like, stop being, like, anxious around me. Like, it's fine. Like,
Right. Like, the anxious, the parts where it starts getting unhealthy is when the anxious is triggered because the avoidant has created some space, or they feel space. They need the space. They're trying to preserve their independence, and the anxious, and even a secure, if an anxious is just chasing too much, the secure tries to help them and calm them down, but at some point it's very important for the anxious to learn that at some point they have to learn to self-soothe in some regard. And similar with the avoidant, at some point it's like they also have to learn to give in a certain area and overcome that fear of I can become somewhat either dependent or really an interdependence with their partner. There's a certain aspect of courage and bravery. Like there's always risk in a relationship. You can never guarantee that it's going to for sure work out. Mm-hmm. I think the avoidant learning when to do that. Another way of thinking is that the anxious's walls are very, very low or almost no walls. And like if somebody's running over to you and telling you like some very personal things early on can be a quick sign that they're an anxious person. You also have the rare type where they're both an anxious and an avoidant. I tell these things to people and they immediately classify themselves as both. I would rush to that conclusion. There definitely are people like that. But you can see how they, and in different relationships, like somebody who's secure can still be pushed in a certain direction. If an avoidant is being super avoidant, the secure still has needs. And if the avoidant is really not giving and only creating their space, a secure person might eventually walk around or even trigger some anxious parts of them where it's like, hey, like I sometimes need to rely on my partner. So anyways, I found this stuff really, really fascinating because I was blessed in a way that I relationships are always like an amazing thing. I don't just mean romantic relationships, just relationships in general. I think that I'm a trusting person and I have no really reason to fear intimacy. And I think I navigated them well. Like I didn't think that I didn't have any walls. Like I'm not somebody who falls in love quickly on the first or second date. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. There's nothing I want to tell you that I have many friends who I would say fall under more of an avoiding category and many friends who fall under an anxious category as well. And they're wonderful people. And I've learned so much from them. And I can tell you, I think that anxious people sometimes teach you how to communicate better in certain ways. Yeah. A secure person does that well, or in some ways, sometimes I would say an anxious person is over-communicating. And it's sometimes like you don't have to communicate everything. But the avoidant person has also taught me a lot about, I want to say introversion. Like I was coming off as a strong extrovert, but like an avoidant person needs their space. So they spend a lot of times in their own circle and learn to deal with things a lot themselves. Even more so than a secure person was. Like sometimes the point is we're trying to tell an avoidant person, hey, we do want you to open up a little bit and rely a little bit on people, but learning some of those really, like it helped me during COVID, that where I had one of my old roommates is more avoidant, and he really helped me with developing certain aspects of me where it's like learning to cope and be with myself a tremendous amount. Even more so. So there are wonderful things about both sides. So anyways, it was really fascinating to me to learn about these kind of things. And I definitely, is this something that you found interesting? It's something that I think that they should even just brief students in high school. Like I think it's that, like, it's not like when people talk about Myers-Briggs or they talk about Enneagram, very like interesting psychology, things. They're more they're pop. I call that like more pop psychology, and they're interesting. Don't, like, if you hate that stuff, fine. If you love that stuff, fine. I've looked into some of those things. Attachment theory is just based a lot more in psychology, and it's like in some ways more simple yet deep because of its simplicity. Like we're not talking about 9 different types or 16 different personalities. Yeah. I'm talking to you about like 3 very different basic types. They're fascinating. Like we talked about a fear of abandonment, which we see a lot of time in the anxious. Sometimes we see that in avoidant, sometimes where they're worried about being abandoned, but instead of chasing, they actually just pull away completely before something goes wrong. But there's other types too, like a fear of enmeshment. We talked about controlling parents. At times when relationships can be sometimes very tough for children when their parents maybe were very, very, very overbearing. And maybe there were some role reversals that occurred where the child sometimes had to act as the parent. And relationships were just very hard for them. They just were controlled. They have a fear of being controlled. Can be a common theme for avoidance. And anyways, I found this stuff fascinating, and I don't want to I'm not trying to say these are all encompassing. People are very complicated and they can find themselves in different scenarios. But I just found it fascinating to learn about different ways people cope that I would never even anticipated, never even known about.
No, it is interesting. And like, again, I think I classify myself in different ways depending on the situation as well.
Right, that completely makes sense.
So but I think I've been in so many different types of relationships.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not talking about my romantic relationships. Those
Right.
those were different, and like those had their own issues, but I
Right.
don't think it was like we're not on the same page attachment style.
Right.
But I'm just saying in friendships and relationships with other people.
Yeah.
So you kind of, and I like pick up on some of my own habits, like the whole like over explaining thing. Like it's not because I'm anxious. It's because I've had people who are anxious
Right.
and need things over explained.
Right.
So then I will over explain myself. It's like, it's not even to make them happy. It's
Right.
just to kind of set that boundary.
Right.
To be like, here, I'm setting the expectation.
Right.
That's what I called it. Because like, a friend asked me something and I gave her a whole explanation for it. It's like she invited me somewhere and I'm like, okay, I'll come, but I'm gonna leave after an hour because like I don't want to go out on a Sunday night.
Yeah.
I have stuff to do. And she's like, okay, you didn't have to tell me all that. Like I think I explained a little bit. I was like, okay, but like I'm telling you because people in the past
Right.
will have taken me saying, okay, but I'm only staying for an hour, or like me coming and leaving after an hour as like offensive. And it's
Right.
like, okay, I'm setting this expectation right now.
Right.
You understand the reasons why.
Yep.
I'm covering my bases so
Right.
we don't have conflict for the future.
Right.
And it's a good thing in dating too, because it's like, I mean, yeah, you don't want to over-explain everything
Sure.
to like a first date, but sometimes it's like, it's good to set the expectation and to communicate it.
Especially as you get later on in a relationship where you're clearly interested in each other. I think it's like a mix between, that's partly of like communicating, and those who end up looking up attachment theory, there's also this idea of protest behavior, where we see it in the anxious a lot, where it's like they don't know how to communicate and something goes wrong, so they just like, they'll start blaming or showing things because it's kind of like a way of like a child might act, because they don't have really the coping mechanisms to be like, okay, I had an issue and I'm trying to explain that to you about something about the future, and they really can't self-soothe. So it's like, it's a mix, it's a balance, because like it's a two-way street. So the other side definitely needs to also in sometimes support them. But there's the other part where it's like, it's important to communicate on these things, but then also like, part of me is like, you know what? Not everything always needs to be communicated, and sometimes people will be a little bit disappointed, or sometimes there will be a little bit of small wounds, and it's not always about healing every single wound. Sometimes it's learning to be like, I'm okay that I have that wound. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And like to learn to live with that wound. It's a balancing act. I'm not saying that everyone should just take everything as is, or just expect other people to deal with their own wounds all the time. I'm not saying that, but there's a balance there too. It's not about becoming whole, or the best you can be. Is a mix between healing some wounds and learning to live with others and saying, you know what, that's a wound and that's okay.
I agree. I think it's a really interesting topic, and definitely everyone, if you're interested, you should read more. We could probably talk for hours about it.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's time to wrap up the episode.
So I want to finish on one last thing on a Jewish concept here. I talked about the concept of the secure, thinking highly of themselves and highly of others. I want to just finish off. This is a beautiful line in Judaism called V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. And the concept is that you need to love thyself, love yourself, like you love others like you love yourself, or you could say the other way around, love yourself like you love others. And I think in order to talk about healthy relationships, both between non-romantic and romantic, that's a great way. It's hard not to necessarily get there, but it's a great way to eventually get to success. Very important to love ourselves, which allows us to love other people.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good, I have something similar written on my necklace, actually. One of my necklaces broke, so I was trying to dig around my jewelry for my necklaces, and I found my old Hadaya necklace, and what I have written on it is, Im eina nili mili, if I'm not for me, who will be for me? Uksha nila, it's me, ma'ani. But if I'm only for myself, what am I? So it's just yeah, you need to love yourself, because you are your main advocate, you are your biggest fan. I like to say that I'm my biggest fan. I'm my favorite person. But also, you can't only be for yourself. You have to love others like you love yourself. So, I think it's cool. Tied it into Judaism.
Yep.
Okay, Yoni, before we wrap up, can you give my listeners one piece of dating advice? I know we've given advice throughout, but just sum it up into one piece.
And this works perfectly because now it's talking, like I said, my Roman Empire with attachment theory, it plays a little bit into this. we talked the theme of consistency. I mentioned that with the parenting and with, but also looking for that in when you're dating. So it's really about listening to your feelings. It's not specific actions that I'm referring to. Listening to how things, and it can be tough, to how people are consistently making you feel, and how. So it's if they're consistently making you feel in some sort of negative way, to listen to that, versus if they're consistently making you feel like, oh, they're communicating. We started talking about a good communicator. I'm trying to say even the next level of how you look for that. If they're, like their actions are consistent and they're making you feel safe, or not guessing yourself, or or you feel like you have to gaslight yourself, or you are gaslighting yourself. I mean, that can be even hard to identify. But if the person is if you're constantly making you feel like parts that you don't like, or heightened sense of emotions that are not necessarily good things, to note that, if that makes sense what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. That
would be my advice. Noticing those type of things. The example I want to give is we were at I was at a Friday night. I don't want to drag it on too long. Okay. Friday night, I was at a Friday night dinner, and people were talking about like their ick. Maybe that was like that was the icebreaker.
What's your ick?
What's your ick? And somebody said that it wasn't them at the table, but somebody talked about somebody else who once said that their ick was like when you're in a relationship and the person texts you good morning every single morning.
No, I love that.
Right. So most people really do love that.
I love that.
And I'm tying that in with the Roman Empire avoidance side. Like, I see that as needing space, and there's nothing inherently wrong with being an avoidant and that scaring them. I see that as a fear of intimacy. And you don't have to overread it. You never know. Like, it could be maybe there's other stories because they had a bad experience with somebody else. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But for me, when I said that, I was like, I piped up and said at that point, it just came out of my mouth. I was like, when they said that would be their ick if somebody texted them good morning, I was like, for me, that would be a red flag knowing that. Like that would be a red, that's like, whoa, like for all of a sudden, like knowing that, like there's an inconsistent, or that feeling of like, wow, like I'm expressing like a nice thing to you, or like,
I'd like to know that he's thinking of me.
Right. Or and then all of a sudden, even if you don't love it or whatnot, like that's I'm not trying to invalidate their feelings, as in like, okay, I understand that that's how they feel, but that's really not somebody I see as a partner. Like, let me like that. I want to wish them Boker Tov. No, I'm just just joking there, of course. But that would be the advice. Like, if you can, and I know it's hard to identify, but are they making you feel? Are they consistently giving you this feeling of heightened sense of emotion in potential negative ways? Tap into that. That for me would be flags, because versus if they're constantly, you're like, no, okay, things are going fine. They're not making me feel those ways, and it's this more like, oh yeah, like I can, I guess, trust that person. That would be my advice.
Okay, it's good advice.
Thank you.
And I try to do that for myself. Okay, and last but certainly not least, Yoni, what is your Real Housewife tagline?
My Real Housewife tagline is walking the balance between chaos and calm.
It's good. I like it.
Thank you.
Well, Yoni, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for coming, for talking, for sharing. I really appreciate it. I had a good time. This is
Likewise.
so fun. I hope all of you enjoyed as well. And Sticky Situation Nation, you'll catch me next time. Bye, everybody.